Hi everyone, it's me, Tim, and today I want to talk about job interview questions. I did a video called Interview Questions, I'll link it below, but that was about press interview questions, but a lot of people assumed it was going to be about job interviews and asked for this video. So let me talk about questions I like to ask in job interviews and questions I've been asked and just job interviews in general. So, I've been involved in many job interviews on both sides of the table. When I go to job interviews now where I'm hiring someone, I assume people there are going to ask design and code questions for them to work through. By the way, I don't interview artists, so you don't want a colorblind ex-programmer talking about art. I have my own questions, and I'll mention a few of them here. For example, I've asked people, imagine we're making a single-player fantasy RPG. Design a crafting system for me. Very high level. Explain to me how it works. I just like to have them walk through, and then I'll ask questions of where do the recipes come from? Where do the crafting ingredients come from? Are recipes level-based? Pros and cons. Basically, I don't care about the system they're making. I care about them talking about the system they're making. If I ask someone a disadvantage of their system and they can't think of one, I get suspect. I've asked people to design a classless MMORPG. Basically, describe how you would make that, what the pros and cons of not having a class would be in an MMO. Again, off the top of my head, I can think of several strong cons of a classless MMO. If they can't even tell me one of those or demonstrate that their classless system doesn't suffer from it, again, suspect. I've asked people who've said they've played WoW, who've listed WoW as a favorite game of theirs, to make a quest or a solo instance that teaches a class. And I said, pick a class. Pick any class you want. Pick a class you're familiar with. Druid, Warrior, Warlock. Imagine somewhere between level 1 and 10, you want to teach them about something, some class ability they're going to get, a spell, something. Show me a quest or quest series or solo dungeon instance that will teach how to use that class. For code, I don't like puzzle codes. I prefer to give one that just shows me how people think. A classic one we've used is just on the whiteboard, do pseudocode for reversing words in a sentence. So if I give you the sentence, hello there world, you'd give me world there, hello. I just like seeing how they walk through that code. And I'm often asked them, speak aloud as you're doing it. I want to know what you're thinking. Now, I know people who hate these, who say doing stuff on a whiteboard in front of a bunch of people is not the same as doing your work. And I get that. But at some point, I need people to show me that they can do the work. You need to show me. And you can't just come in with a lot of demos or lists on your resume of things you've worked on, because I've had a lot of people lie about those. My worst case was at Interplay. I went to hire a programmer who literally lied through his teeth about stuff he had worked on. We then hired him on the basis of a recommendation I gave in the interview, and he couldn't do any of the things he said he could do. And that was a nightmare. He was the bane of my existence for the last several years at Interplay, because I'd see this guy trying to do things who didn't know even the most basic math. Watching this man try to rotate a sprite, and he didn't know anything about rotations, rotational formulas. He didn't even know what sine and cosine was. Wow. Now, I've been on that end too. I interviewed at Valve in 2011, and I was giving code and design tests, which was odd because I told them when I came up there I was interviewing as a designer, and they said, sure. And the very first thing they asked me was a code test. I flubbed it. Of course I flubbed it. I hadn't coded in years. And I flubbed it really badly. It was a question about making the code to run a control panel for an elevator. I was about halfway through writing down on the whiteboard what I would do, and I realized I'd made a big mistake. I told them what the mistake was. I restarted, and then I ran out of time. And they said later they were rejecting me on the basis of the code work. The design tests I did, I was told I did really well on that. So I walked away confused because I showed up as a designer saying I wanted to be a designer at Valve and was told they don't hire designers, but they're going to interview me anyway. And then half my tests were code. Except lunch. Lunch was all business questions, and I didn't get to eat much. And the receptionist got mad because when I came back, she goes, "How much of your lunch did you eat?" And I said, "Well, I got asked a lot of questions." And she got mad. She said, "These guys do that all the time. They never let the people eat lunch." Anyway, it was an interesting experience, though, and I liked it. It gave me a sense of like, okay, this is what it's like. I hadn't been on that end of the table in 6 years. Although my hiring at Carbine were 4 different interviews with the people who founded Carbine, with the programmers, with the producer, and then with a bunch of people from NCSoft, the parent company of Carbine. That was, so 4 days of interviews. So I get it. Here's some other questions I like to ask people, though, no matter what position you're looking for. I go, what was the biggest team you've worked with? Because I want to know, as teams get bigger, dynamics change. If it's a small team, I will ask them questions like, did you have to wear a lot of hats? If it's a big team, I will ask questions like, well, who did you answer to and who did you manage? And ask them questions about that flow of information. If they went to college, I may ask them what their favorite class was. And then ask them questions if I know that topic. I had somebody who said he went to engineering school and his favorite class was thermodynamics. I asked him some questions about it. I just want to know what people take away from what their experiences were. If they were self-taught, I usually say, what was the most fun topic that you had to learn on your own? And why was it fun for you to explore? If people really are self-taught, they usually have an answer right away for that. If they aren't, they'll struggle to think of something some topic they learned that was fun. And I'm not doing this to catch people up in lies. I'm doing it to deep dive into their experiences. But yes, that will occasionally call people out who are just making stuff up. If you worked on a project, or you gave a demo, or you worked on a class project, I'll pick that from your resume and say, what content in here were you responsible for? What did you design? What did you code? What did you write? And then I'll ask them about that, their experience doing that, including what was the hardest problem you had to solve to do that feature, to add that content. Name something that was difficult to solve, but that you did solve, and talk about your solution. Or I'll say, did you manage anybody, or did you take a lead role in any of these things? What was that like? What were some of the decisions that were hard to make? Or did you ever have to make a decision that your team disagreed with? And how did that end up after the project, demo, or class project was over? So I love to ask things like that because there were a growing number of people who did not want to be managed nor manage anyone. And once a team gets past about 10 or 15 people, that just goes away. So unless you want to always work in small groups, you're going to have to figure out how to both manage people and how you like to be managed. And with most of them, I explained that when I'm a manager, I will meet you halfway with many things. Like if you really need a quiet office or your own office, or when you're given your work, you don't want to be checked in on again until it's finished. I will try to meet you halfway on those. What I expect from employees, though, is they meet me halfway. That they go, I understand that I have this condition of employment. How can we meet it or meet most of it? I don't like when people go, they throw down a gauntlet and go, I must have my own windowed corner office and you can only speak to me on Friday afternoon. I'm like, okay, that person's gone. Because I understand people have restrictions on how they like to work, but a lot of those feel like ultimatums. And I know you don't want to hear an ultimatum from me. I don't want to hear an ultimatum from you. So, and I try not to do that when I'm interviewed. I don't go, well, I can only be lead. I like being senior programmer or senior designer. I like someone else making all the decisions. And I've worked both ways. In fact, I've been lucky in that I've been able to go up the ladder and then consciously step back down for some games and then go back up. A lot of people tell me once they go up the ladder, you can't go back down. And then the Peter principle kicks in, where you find yourself in a position that you're not really competent in, and now you don't know where to go. One question that I love, love, love to ask people in interviews is, what hobby do you have that has directly influenced your work? And give me an example of it. I've had people who love to cook, who made a crafting system based on cooking. I've had people who like to hike, who that influenced how they designed levels, especially outdoor levels with sight lines and angles and how to make paths obvious. These are the kind of things I love hearing, because I love hearing that people have hobbies outside of work, but I also like hearing how they integrate that. It's nice to talk to someone who has a well-integrated life. And then finally, and this is sometimes controversial, although I don't understand why, I often ask people towards the end of the interview, why do you want to work for this company? What is it about this company that made you send in a resume? And I get it. Sometimes people honestly say, look, I just need work, and I sent my resume everywhere. But I love hearing something like, I'm super into story-based RPGs, and that's what you guys make. I'm a big fan of this game and this game. Or, I backed a Kickstarter of yours, and I loved following the development, and now I want to be part of something like that. Because that shows interest in the company and something more than just, I threw my resume in the pile, hope I come out on top. So, this isn't the most important question I asked, but I love hearing it. And then, of course, there's the classic, I ask people at the end of the interview if they have any questions. And sometimes it's interesting to see what kind of questions they want to know. Like, some people ask about the development environment. Some people ask about benefits. Some people ask about promotional opportunities. I like all those questions, and they're valid questions, but it tells me a little bit about your priorities if those are the things you're asking about. Not in a negative way, but just if I hire someone whose first question about a company was promotional opportunities, I'm going to go, this person wants to eventually be the lead or director. That's fine. We're always looking for people like that, but I would love to know that in your interview. I think that's a lot of what I wanted to talk about. I hope this gave you some insight into questions I like to get and to give during job interviews, and it makes a good sister video to that, what kind of press interview questions I like to get. Anyway, hope you liked it.